Conversation that we started on Wednesday, and that is with print, the history of print media in the United States and the effects that print media has on the good peoples of these United States. And where we left off last time, we talked about the International Copyright Act. That was the last thing we discussed on Wednesday. Anybody have a quick reminder? What was the International Copyright Act?
Royalties.
Royalties for
international authors.
International authors, right? We're the International Copyright Act. We are going to respect international copyrights, right? Just because a copyright is from a different country, now we're going to honor it. We have to pay royalties to authors who have copyrights in other countries, even though we're printing the material here in the United States, okay? And again, that was a big boom for American authors. That was a big boom for American authors because it leveled the playing field. Now it costs just as much to print a book by an American author as it did by a foreign author. Therefore, content was what was more important rather than just profit. The next major occurrence in print came in 1893 when McClure's magazine first launches. McClure's magazine is significant on a bunch of different levels, but for our purposes, the most significant reason McClure's launching is important is because it was really the beginning of a move towards investigative journalism. Investigative journalism is the idea that you have to go hunt down the story. The story's not going to come to you. In a typical newsroom, and we talked about this a little bit on Wednesday with the difference between a newspaper and a magazine, right? A newspaper tells you the who, the what, the when, the where, the immediate aftermath. Magazines tend to go more in-depth and give more context and round it all out. In a typical journalistic setting, news comes to you, right? I mentioned, when I worked at the Rockford Register-Star, people would call in and say, like, oh, this is the score of this game, or this happened, or, you work in the newsroom at WREF, and people are emailing you or calling you, you're getting press releases. The news comes to you in traditional journalism. In investigative journalism, the underlying idea here is there's more going on that they don't want us to know, whoever they is. People in power don't want the public to know certain things, but the public has a right to know these things, and we're going to find those things. One of the first kind of cases of investigative journalism that was incredibly monumental in American history was by a woman named Ida B. Wells, who got herself committed to a mental institution so that she could investigate what was really going on, right? Because obviously, if there's nefarious things happening at a mental institution, right? If there's these claims that they're mistreating patients, they're torturing them, they're beating them, they're abusing them, they're ignoring them, those are the claims. It's not like you can go to the director of the mental institution and say, hey, are you doing this? And they're going to go, oh yeah, you want to see it? Right? They're going to hide that. So Ida B. Wells decided that the only way she was going to get the real story was to actually go in and see it for herself. But if she told them, hey, I'm a journalist, I want to see what you guys actually do, they're not going to, they're going to clean it up, right? They're going to make it look better than it really is. So the only way she could really get to the bottom of the story was to have herself committed. She faked insanity so she could get committed. And once she was there for a while, she had her publisher come get her out. They tried to keep her there and say, oh, no, she really is crazy. She really is. They tried to hold her there, but the publisher was ultimately able to get her out of the mental institution. And she could write a story that was kind of this expose of, wow, we are terrible. We treat people horribly. McClure's magazine was dedicated entirely to that brand of investigative journalism, that idea of we need people to know the real story, not just what you want them to know. Personal opinion. This form of journalism is on its last legs in the United States. There's very little investigative journalism happening anymore, and it sucks because there's a lot of shady shit. There's no decrease in the amount of things that should be investigated. There's only a decrease in the amount of things that are investigated, and it's largely for financial reasons, right? If I wanted to do a deep dive into in Rockford, right, the Winnebago County coroner was just arrested for forgery, and his wife was arrested for theft. Okay, and it's somewhat big news in Rockford. If I thought, I want to know more about this, right, there's something there that I think is more than meets the eye, and I want to investigate this, I can't just sit at home and investigate it. I have to go out and find the story. I have to be physically present for things. I have to be a little bit sneaky. I have to be very, very coy. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes resources. Those all take money. Those are all expensive things. As opposed to, oh, we got this press release, I'll just type it up. Right? It's more expensive to do investigative journalism, which is why we don't see it happen that often. There's not a great rate of return. It costs money to make, and there's not a lot of people who are clamoring for it. And so not a lot of people buy it when they do print it or when they do run it. Which sucks. It sucks. How many of you guys have seen the movie Spotlight? So good, you really should. It's like one of the best movies made in the last 15 years. It's all about this. There's a section of the Boston Globe. It's a weekly section called Spotlight, where that's all they do is they investigate some big story that's underneath the surface. And the movie Spotlight is about how they uncovered the Catholic Church pedophilia scandal in Boston. That's not something the Catholic Church sent out a press release about. They had to investigate themselves, almost like a police officer would. They had to investigate the crime so that they could write about it, and write about it truthfully. Again, that kind of journalism doesn't make money. And as a result, we're seeing less and less of it. But in 1893, when McClure's launches, they really threw that to the forefront. It really became a big thing in American culture to understand, no, we have to look beyond just the surface level press release and story. In 1900, America introduces compulsory education. You guys know what compulsory education is?
You have to go to it.
Required, yep. In 1900, the United States government says all children must go to school. Why do we care? We're talking about the publishing world. What does that have to do with publishing?
It increases the amount of people that can read and write.
It increases the number of consumers. What else does it do?
Allow new kind of avenues for them to make books specifically for education.
You've got people who now need the books. Right? Not only do you have more people who can read, you have more people who are required to. Again, I'm weird because I don't require a textbook. What's the most you guys paid for a textbook this semester? Do you remember?
$250.
$250. What class was that?
Math.
Math?
Yeah.
What in the fuck is a $250 textbook? Right? Is it this big? A little bit smaller?
Yeah.
Is it gold leafed?
Yeah, I mean...
Full color and really, really nice?
Barely use it either.
So what the fuck are we... $250 for that book, right? If you were not a math student, you wouldn't buy the $250 math textbook. When compulsory education becomes a thing in the United States, you're increasing the market size and you're increasing the consumer base. Because now you have all these books that need to be sold to go into schools, but then you also have a whole lot more literate people who can read the books later, who can read things after school. Also in 1900, one-third of newspapers in the United States trend towards yellow journalism. You ever heard the term yellow journalism?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. What do you think? What does that mean to you?
It's kind of exaggerating in order to get people to buy it.
Yep. Sensationalized, right? Yellow journalism is sensationalism. In 1900, one out of every 3 newspapers in this country was sensationalizing the news to try and sell more copies. So when you hear people in 2020 say, oh, the news is crap, they're just making it, they want to scare you. It's not new. That's not a new criticism of media. Not even remotely, right? In 1900, one out of every 3 papers was a sensationalized version to try and sell copies because, again, as I'll say a million more times in this class, never forget that media is business. Newspapers do not exist for your good. They exist to make profit. Period. All businesses exist for the same reason, to make profit. And a newspaper and a television station and a radio station are no different. They exist to make profit. So when you see something like 1/3 of newspapers turn towards yellow journalism, is that an indictment of the journalism of the time? Yeah, but more so, it's an indictment of the culture. Because they keep fucking buying it. Think of journalism like fishing, right? I don't know if you guys are avid fishermen or not. I'm not. I love sitting on a boat. I don't get what the fucking point is of throwing shit in the water and waiting. But I know a lot of fishermen, right? I have a lot of friends who fish. And they all have their loyalty to a certain type of bait, right? If you're a bass fisherman, you gotta use this. If you're a trout fisherman, you gotta use this. Well, what happens is if you throw your bait in the water or your lure or whatever, and it's not working, if the fish aren't biting, you throw out a different lure, you throw out different bait. And once fish start biting, that's the bait you keep going back to. That's the way journalism works. Why do they keep running sensationalized stories? Because that's what you read. That's what you buy. They throw the bait out there, and a bunch of people go, oh shit, more of that, please. Can you blame them for continuing to throw out the same bait? You've told them it works. You know, in the old days, it was really easy to know what worked because it was just real simple, sales, right? If this is on the cover, do we sell more copies than if that's on the cover? Well, now, nobody buys news. You don't buy any entertainment. You know, you guys steal everything. You don't buy news, so how do we know if you're reading a story on Twitter?
Number of shares.
Number of shares?
Number of likes.
Number of likes. Any others?
Possibly the comments that are being made on there.
Comments? Engagements? Anyone? Do you know that we can track how long you take looking at the story? We can track if you're just scrolling past or if you stop. One of the most important numbers that you find in modern day journalism and advertising is what's called a click-through rate, or a CTR. How many times do people click on the story? Because you think about it, Twitter and Facebook, social media, it's one of the biggest sources for news for younger generations. How do you determine if you're going to click on a story? You get a headline. You get a picture. This is where clickbait comes from. They're baiting you to click. Because if I can say something that's going to spark your imagination, well, if I want to know more about this, once you click that story, we know that's what you want. We've got now your click-through. And that's all we really want. We could give a fuck if you read it. We could care less if you agree with it. You clicked on it. And by clicking on it, you expose yourself to the advertisements we put on the page. So now I can go to Lightweight Furniture and say, hey, my news stories regularly get 50,000 views a day. That's 50,000 people who will be seeing your ad if you give me money. I sensationalize my news so that I can sell more ads, so that I can make more money. And you keep buying it, you keep clicking it, so I keep doing it. Again, this isn't new. In the year 2020, when people say, like, oh, sensationalized journalism, COVID is a media hoax. First of all, fuck you, read a book. It's not a media hoax. Stop it. And for the love of God, if you or anyone you know shares that 94% statistic, I want you to just punch yourself in the face.
There's a 94% statistic.
You didn't hear about this?
No.
CDC put out a report that said of the 180,000 deaths of COVID-19, only 6% did not have a comorbidity. Meaning only 6% of the people who died from COVID didn't have another condition. COVID alone is what killed them. And so people are going, see, it's bullshit.
That's how HIV works.
Exactly! No one has ever died from AIDS. Ever. AIDS is not fatal. AIDS just cripples your immune system until the common cold kills you. So people are saying, oh, see, only 6% only had COVID, so it's obviously a media hoax. No! Learn to read! Because look, I have a shit ton of comorbid. Look at me. I'm fat, I'm old, I have really high blood pressure, I'm angry for no particular fucking reason every moment of the day. I have a stroke waiting to happen. I am a walking aneurysm in progress. But I'm not dead yet. If I'm walking down the street and a mountain lion eats my face, I die while having obesity and high blood pressure. But that's not what fucking did it. It was the fucking mountain lion. You can't then go, oh, well, see, but of all the people eaten by mountain lions, only 3 of them actually were healthy. Because we're all fucking unhealthy. Stupid ass. Okay. Yellow journalism sucks, is I guess my point. I'm gonna go back. Bring it all back here. So again, if you or your parents or anybody you know is like, oh, see, only 6% of people, fucking hit them. Just blast their ass. Because they're... Okay. I'm sick of this shit. I want to go back to normal, right? Do you want to go back to normal? Thank you. Stop being stupid. I just want people to stop being stupid.
People have been saying this.
It's gonna take some time.
I know, but like, fucking New Zealand did it. Like, they're fine. Everything's normal in New Zealand. Because they took it seriously. They were like, all right, let's just chill the fuck out for 2 months. And now we're normal again. And here we are, like, fuck you, I have freedoms. You can't make me wear a mask, I have civil liberties. Spell civil liberties, Clyde, and we'll fucking talk. In 1939, it bothers me. It just really bothers me. In 1939, paperback books are introduced. Paperback books are another, this is why we're recording. So that one day, when I drop dead of a heart attack, people will be like, see? That's why. You just chill the fuck out, kids. In 1939, paperback books are introduced to the American marketplace. This is another huge boom to the publishing industry. Paperback books are cheap. They're cheap to buy and they're cheap to produce. What's the alternative to a paperback book? You have paperback and you have
Hardcover.
Hardcover books are usually like cardboard, right, with some kind of nice binding, nice cover over the front of it. They're harder to make. They're more expensive materials to use. Even the paper of a hardback book is of a higher quality than the paper of a paperback book. You can't go to the library right now. Go to a bookstore when the libraries reopen. If you pick up a hardcover and pick up a paperback and open them up, the paper quality is different even. Prior to paperbacks, books were these esteemed objects. I have a 1908 copyright publication of Plato's The Republic. It's fucking cool. That's why I got it. Like, this is amazing. It's this, brilliantly crafted piece of work. The paperback, right? It's the one-ply toilet paper, right? Of paper. But that's good for the industry because if it's cheap to produce and you can sell it at a lower price, people will buy more of it. Right? It's the Walmart approach to business. Yeah, this is probably going to break quicker, you're probably going to lose this, you're probably going to destroy it, but it's only $2. That's what paperback books are, right? And they work, right? They work. The industry showed that though that's a successful business model, and it created a lot of money in the industry. In 1960, publishing houses start to consolidate. In 1960, you see these large publishing companies start to group together, start to buy each other out, start to merge, they start to consolidate. This creates problems. We've already talked about when media ownership decreases, right? When we consolidate media ownership, it creates less voices in the marketplace. The way that publishing works, let's say you're an author, right? Let's say all of you have written a book, you've written a manuscript. You want to get it published. So your agent, if you're good, sends a copy of that manuscript to 30 different publishing companies, 30 different publishing houses. And if you're really lucky, more than one of them like it and want to publish it, and it starts a bidding war, right? They start, like, okay, we'll pay you $800,000. Or we'll pay you $1.2 million. Or we'll pay you $1.4. If you're lucky, it starts a bidding war. If you're not a well-known author, however, if this is your first work, or if you've never really had a major successful work, you've had a bunch of things published, but none of them's blown up, more than likely you're going to get one. More than likely you'll get one offer. You send it out to 30 publishing houses, one of them might bite. Because they're the only one biting, they're not going to pay you that much money. Well, now, if there's only 5 publishing companies, it's just that much harder to get published. It's that much harder for one of them to really want your book, let alone 2 of them to start a bidding war. You go from 1 in 30 to 1 in 5? I'm not good at math. You must be, because you have a $250 math book. But my guess is that the probability there is really, really, really lower when you consolidate down to fewer options. Okay? So when the publishing houses started to consolidate in 1960, it makes it a lot harder for new authors. It makes it a lot harder for new authors to get onto the scene and to make a living in the publishing industry. And that's a trend we still see today. We still see that today. It is hard for new authors to make it, and really easy for well-known authors to put out shit. More on that later. In the 1970s, we see bookstore chains come out of nowhere. Prior to the 70s, if you wanted to buy a book, you went to your mom and pop local. Up until a few years ago, Freeport still had one of those. You guys ever go to Book World?
Yeah, it was my favorite store in Freeport.
Yeah? I went there once. That was good. I'm I didn't need to go back. What's that? Prior to the 1970s, every town had a little mom and pop bookstore. Well, when chains emerged, like Walden, Borders, Barnes & Noble, again, it's the Walmart effect. They now buy in bulk. Book World was, if there was a book that was like Harry Potter, right? Book World would order like 50 copies of Harry Potter. Because that's really all they're going to sell. Borders would order 50,000 copies of Harry Potter. Well, like anything, the more you order, the more discounted it is. You get bulk pricing. So Borders and Barnes & Noble was able to get their stock at a much, much, much lower cost than the mom and pops would, because they're just ordering a couple at a time. Barnes & Noble and Borders, because they had that huge profit margin from having low costs on bringing in the books, they can have a larger range of books, a larger diversity of books. Right? You can go to Barnes & Noble and find a book that there's only 2 copies of, because they can afford to do that. Book World, they got a special order. So it's going to take you 2 weeks, and you're going to be paying for it. Right? A book that would retail at Barnes & Noble for $24.95, Book World has to special order it. Because they're special ordering it, it's probably going to cost you around $50. So is it worth it to continue to support Book World if you're spending twice as much? Right? But in the 70s, as they emerged, it does a lot of damage to the mom and pop bookstores around the country. And again, Freeport being weird, Freeport was able to hold on to a mom and pop bookshop for a lot longer than most places. Rockford hasn't had a mom and pop bookstore for a long time. A long time. In the 1980s, audiobooks come on the scene. We can now listen to our books. Any of you ever listen to an audiobook? Yeah.
Was it like a tape? You would stick it in that machine with the headphones?
Yep. It used to be books on tape. In the olden days, back in my youth. Well, now there's Audible, right? Now there's apps, right? Hell, even the Kindle reader. Like, even if you have the Kindle app, it'll read the book to you. Audiobooks were a new approach for the publishing industry because it allowed them to not only reach the interests of the people of the day, right? Because in the 80s, everybody was go, 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 right? It was, business, business, business. I don't have time to sit and read, but I can listen to something while I'm on the move, right? Have it in the background. You can't background read, right? I can't read and do something else. You're just fucking reading. Books on tape allows you to take in the book while we're doing something else, right? It fit the culture of the 80s. The other thing it did is it allowed them to recycle old material. This book that we purchased the rights to 30 years ago, the book sales have been declining. Well, shit, let's put it on tape. Now people who might not buy the book will buy the book on tape. That's another avenue to bring in that money. It's another way to generate revenue for the business. Right. In 1982, USA Today launches. If you've never picked up a newspaper in your life, you've probably read the USA Today. USA Today is the most broadly distributed newspaper in the country. Have you ever seen a copy of the USA Today? Physical copy? What's different about USA Today compared to like Chicago Tribune or Wall Street Journal or any others?
There's like multiple stories on the cover of USA Today rather than the Chicago Tribune, where it's just like one.
Yeah. The Trib will give you a front cover story, maybe three, right? But there's one above the fold, right? So when newspapers are folded in half and you're just seeing the top, there's like one story, right? It's also very dry. Chicago Tribune, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, it's very USA Today uses full color throughout the paper. They use a lot of what we call infographics, charts. In other words, it's a lot flashier. And in fact, when USA Today launched in 1982, it was deliberately built to compete with television, not with other newspapers. By the time 1982 rolls around, there's televisions in almost every home. Nobody's reading the newspaper anymore because they're getting their news from the television. So USA Today, the Gannett Corporation, who owns USA Today, said, fuck it, we can compete with television. What makes television so fancy? Why do people like television? Oh, because it's colorful. Oh, because it's loud. Oh, because it jumps out. It switches stories quickly. Okay, well, let's do a newspaper that does all those things. And that's what USA Today was built on. USA Today is the television of newspapers. Get a copy of USA Today. You can do this online even. And look up a story about any particular subject of the day, right? And then pick up a copy of any other national newspaper and read a story about the same subject. It's the difference between talking to a third grader and talking to a doctor. USA Today is written for children. It's written for 5th grade reading comprehension level. The Wall Street Journal is written for 10th grade reading comprehension level. It's not a coincidence that USA Today outsells the Wall Street Journal. It's not a coincidence that there's a broader subscription base for USA Today than the Wall Street Journal. Because we like pretty dumb stuff. We don't want our news to confuse us. We don't want our news to make us have to think. Oh, look at the picture. It's right there in the picture. There you go. right? When USA Today launches in 1982, it's commercially successful, but from a critic standpoint, from a civic standpoint, it's shit. It's absolute shit. And as is the way with all markets, when one thing is successful, everybody else copies it. So you see a lot of other newspapers going that same route, going like, oh, well, shit, USA Today's making a lot of money by being stupid. Maybe we should be more stupid. And see newspapers dumbing down their coverage. Next. In the 90s, Amazon started selling books online. This is before they owned everything else. In the 90s, Amazon started selling books online. And now the book worlds of this world are really good and proper fun. Not immediately, right? A lot of people have this misconception that once the internet commerce scene became available, that was it. Everybody jumped on it. There was a lot of reluctance to start buying online. A lot of people did not get into internet commerce for quite a while. But the idea was introduced in the 90s. So now my options are I can either A, go to Book World, pay more for the book and wait for it. B, go to Borders, pay less for the book and get it immediately. Or C, stay home, get it even cheaper, and wait for a couple days. Cool. Right, as a consumer, fuck yeah. I'm saving money. I don't have to leave my house for this. And it doesn't matter how obscure the book is. To this day, it frustrates the hell out of me when I go to a store and they don't have what I want. It really bothers me. Which is stupid. It shouldn't. But it's because we've all become so spoiled with online shopping. The online marketplace has spoiled us so much that we expect every store to have what we want because, well, Amazon does. It's to the point now where I will not go to Menards until I go online and see if they have it first. I'm not just going to go. Because then I feel like I wasted my time, you know? It's like, Joe, all the fucking way out here, they don't even have this. Well, it's stupid for me to assume they're going to have everything I want. But it's just what we're used to. When Amazon starts selling books online in the 90s, it makes it even harder for mom and pop bookshops. And it makes it harder for the chain stores that really had only been around for a couple decades now. In 1993, Newsweek launches an online edition. Newsweek was one of the most respected, most credible magazines in the country. And in 1993, they announced that they were going to launch an online edition. They still have their print version. You can still go to the newsstand and pick up a physical copy, or you can have one delivered to your mailbox for subscription. But now you can just go online and read it too. And they were really the first major magazine to do this. Newsweek was really the first major magazine to get on the online trend in 1993. The World Wide Web only became publicly available in 1991. So this is very early adoption. Newsweek was very, very quick to get on board with the idea of we need to incorporate online, not compete with online. In 1997, Mcom launches. Any of you guys remember Mcom? So much of my childhood was Mcom related. Nobody remembers Mcom? That's sad. Mcom was the magazine for guys. It was a dude magazine, dude! And what was significant about it is that it was a return to narrowcasting. We talk about the Saturday Evening Post, right? The Norman Rockwell covers, right? And what was significant about the Saturday Evening Post is that it was broadcast, right? It was meant for all audiences. Mcom in 1997 came along with a new business model of, why are we trying to appeal to everybody? If I try to appeal to 300 million people, I might get 1 million of them interested. But if I specifically target this one narrowly defined group, in Mcom's case, 18 to 35-year-old men, if I make a magazine just for 18 to 35-year-old men, and I get 70% of that specific market, I'm going to make more money than if I try to get the whole market. By appealing to a specific demographic, I can make more profit. Mcom becomes successful very, very quickly, and very shortly thereafter, you see a whole fuck ton more magazines that are very specifically targeted at small demographics, targeted at particular small groups, because by having a larger market share of this one group, you can make more money. Okay? As 18 to 35-year-old males, right? There are certain companies that really want your attention. Really, really want your attention. Axe body spray, right? Axe body, Mountain Dew, right? You know, like there are brands that you're their market. You're who they want to reach. Well, if I'm the head of advertising for Axe body spray, where am I going to get the most return for my dollar? Is it going to be from an ad placed in Better Homes and Gardens? Or an ad placed in Mcom? My audience is here. I'm going to put my ad revenue here. And that was the real brilliance of narrowcasting and magazines, of specifically targeting groups with magazines, is it gave those advertisers a place to funnel all their money. Go, this is where we're putting all of our cash. In 2004, Google launches the Google Book Project. Believe it or not, Google did something good. They're not just heartless bastards. I mean, they are. They're just not just. You guys ever heard of the Google Book Project? No? You ever heard of the Library of Alexandria?
Yeah.
What was the Library of Alexandria?
It was a couple thousand years ago. It was the kind of the library contained all the written works at the time.
Yeah.
Before it was burned down.
Yeah. The Library of Alexandria was a library in Alexandria, Egypt. And it's mythical because it was said to have held every written volume that they could find at the time. And shockingly enough, it was burned down because people saw it. But the Library of Alexandria was this, again, it's this mythical, legendary place where all the knowledge was held. The Google Book Project was launched as a way to try and recreate virtually the Library of Alexandria. What Google has started doing in 2004, and they continue to this day, is they're trying to digitize every book. Every book. Every book that we have a copy of in the world, they want a digital version of. Why?
So that way it's preserved forever.
Preservation and access. Right? If I'm really into, I don't know, a particular type of book that's native to southern Texas, but I live in northern Illinois, the likelihood that I'm going to find a book talking about this bug in southern Texas is pretty fucking slim in northern Illinois. But if I go online, got the whole world's library at my fingertips. Right? I don't know if you guys have ever gone to a local library, like the Freeport Library or Warren Library or anything like that, but every library has a local history section. They have a section just for local history, local authors. My mom actually wrote a book about our family's history in Rock County, Wisconsin. Yeah, real page turner. She wrote this book knowing 5 people in the history of the world would ever care. But she wrote it. And a copy of that book is in the library in Janesville, Wisconsin. So that if anybody's researching their family history in that area, they can pick up my mom's book and see connections, and she tells the stories of these people and the local history and all this kind of stuff, right? Most people would never give a shit, but my bloodline, my family, my genealogical, roots go all over the country, all over the world. We have family that still lives in northern Germany. They're like distant cousins, right? And 40 years from now, one of them gets a bug up their butt and decides, I want to know more about this side of my family. They're not going to get on a plane, fly to Janesville, Wisconsin, just so they can read my mom's fucking book. But if it's digitized, they can read it. Right? So when the Google Book project launches in 2004, it really is, don't get me wrong, there's profit involved. They're making money off of it. But it's also a huge public good. It's allowing for all books to now be available to all people. There are obviously barriers in the way in terms of copyright, and in terms of finances and things like that, but it's a very noble cause they've undertaken. In 2005, Slate launches online. Slate is the first entirely online magazine. It is a magazine that does not have a print version. You can only read it online. In 1993, Newsweek launched an online version. In 2005, Slate said, version my ass, it's the whole thing. How does Newsweek make money?
Sales.
Sales. All right, people buying their magazine. How else do they make money?
Yeah, advertising.
Advertising. You pick up any magazine, there's going to be a shit ton of ads in there. They pay to put them in there. So when Slate launches an entirely online magazine, how are they going to make any money?
Advertising.
Entirely advertising. There is no subscription cost. There is no readership cost. It is entirely free to you financially. It's not free in as much as you have to, kind of whore yourself out to all these advertising companies and their own products. And that's how Slate makes all their money. They make all their money off of advertising. And the way that they can charge for advertising is because of their view rate, their click-through rate, the things we already talked about. So in 2005, when Slate launches and becomes successful, they show the publishing world, hey, there's a new way to do business. There's a new way for us to make money, and it involves very little overhead. Because printing a magazine ain't cheap. I have to buy the paper, I have to buy the ink, I have to have it produced, I have to have it distributed, I have to have it delivered. There's a lot of overhead in just making a newspaper or making a magazine. There's very little overhead when it comes to an online magazine. Yeah, I'm still paying for journalists, I'm still paying for electricity, I'm still paying for a building. But I'm not paying for all of those costs involved with distribution, with paper, with production. That's all money I'm not having to spend. So I can see more profit off of those ad sales I get. In 2007, Amazon launches the Kindle. Now we're getting into worlds you people are familiar with. The Kindle, the e-reader. Now you can carry around all of your books without breaking your back. Oh, you already have this book? Yeah, but you have it in that old paper form. Now you need to buy it in a way that you can carry it around on this little flat screen. It's a way to make more money off the same product, and it's a way to have more of that product carried around. Also, not for nothing, people are more likely to spend when it's digital than when it's real. When you have to hand somebody cash, it feels like you're losing money. When you just go, click, it doesn't feel like you're losing money. You are less likely to regret your purchase and less likely to question your purchase if it's digital. Amazon caught on to that real early, and Kindle made that really, really easy for them. It's, I would buy a book. Because if I went to a store and I saw a book I wanted and it was $25, I'd be like, oh shit, I don't know. But I wouldn't think twice about going, oh, $24.95, okay, cool. That's a much easier click for me, right? So the Kindle is good in a lot of ways for the business. In 2011, Borders files for bankruptcy, which sucks, because I liked Borders. I really did. I enjoyed that store. They didn't have a long life, right? Borders did not exist for very long, right? From the 1970s to 2011. That's how quickly they went out of business because they couldn't compete with online distribution, with Amazon at all of the world. Also, Borders was really, really, really reluctant to launch an e-reader. When Amazon came out with the Kindle, Barnes & Noble launched their own version of an e-reader. It sucked. It couldn't compete with a Kindle. It went away pretty quickly, but at least they tried. They also created an online retail space. So you could buy books online. You could buy e-books from Barnes & Noble. Borders didn't. Borders chose to try and fight the digitization wave. Barnes & Noble embraced it. That's why today you can still go to a Barnes & Noble, but you can't go to a Borders. Also in 2011, the New York Times begins charging for content. They put up what we refer to as a paywall. Prior to that, you could read all the New York Times you wanted, which was great for me. I could sit in the comfort of my own home. I used to sit on my porch with my laptop, read the New York Times while I was drinking my coffee in the morning. It was fantastic. Well, ultimately, eventually the New York Times realized, wait, what? Why are we giving away our shit for free? So they put a paywall on and said, all right, you can get 5 stories a month, and after that, you gotta pay for it. Which is what most newspapers do now as well. But even the Journal Standard has a paywall, which is, who's gonna pay for the Journal Standard? Come on. Who's that desperate? Jesus. It's like the back alley crack of newspapers. In 2012, Newsweek stops publishing a printed version altogether. In 93, they put an online edition up. Less than 20 years later, they said, fuck it. We're going all online. They did the math, they checked the numbers, and realized it was not financially viable to continue to print. They were not the first, they were not the last, but they were the biggest. This was a real signaling of what is to come. Since this happened, almost every newspaper and magazine in the country has had very, very serious conversations with themselves about whether or not they should be following suit. Every newspaper, every magazine is in a constant state of, is it time? Is it time to go fully digital? Right? This was kind of the leak in the dam. It is my guess that by the time my grandchildren come around, there won't be print anymore. There will no longer be print newspapers or print magazines. I think within my lifetime, I will see the death of print journalism. You'll still have newspapers, they just won't be printed. They'll just be all online. You'll still have magazines, they'll just be all online.
I work at the Starbucks here in town.
Yeah.
And we used to have a newsstand, like for newspapers, USA Today, New York Times. They took that away last year.
Yeah.
Nobody was buying
It was a waste of space.
Yeah.
It was absolutely a waste of space. Yeah. By the way, you work at Starbucks.
What's that?
I like coffee.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Oh, yeah. It's good stuff.
Trent? I like coffee. Grande mocha, no whip.
I'll try to remember that when you come through.
When you come through, you come here. You bring me coffee. That is why you exist. How is this difficult to understand? You all got that I was saying bring me coffee, right? You all understood that he's the one who's...
Oh.
You thought I was going to come to you for coffee. Who raised you? What the fuck? Yeah, grande mocha, no whip hot. You come to class Wednesday, you don't have that cup in your hand. You're going to throw things at you. It's real simple. It's delicious. Yeah, it's chocolate milk, but I don't give a shit. It's good. It's hot chocolate, but I like it.
With espresso.
Yeah. I said my buddy, he's a coffee snob, and whenever I order that, he's like, why don't I just get a chocolate milk? I'm like, because I like flavor, asshole. Because he just orders black coffee.
Oh.
I just want black coffee. Good for you. Fuck off. Let other people like things. Like, you don't get points. You're not cooler than me because you like bland. Fuck off. People. He's a dick, though. Like, in general, he's a dick. Not just coffee-wise. I think he's generally a bad person. Don't know why I'm friends with him, honestly. Any ideas? Help me out here? No? Okay. Alright! So that happened. It's 10:53. I ended at 10:50, but then Trent made me explain to him how absurd it was that I would go to him for coffee. So that's what took the extra 3 minutes. No school Monday! Woo! Labor Day, motherfucker! So I will see you all on Wednesday, hopefully in person. But again, who knows what the hell's gonna happen? The college could shut down in about 3 hours for all I know. So I'll see you all on Wednesday, whether that be online or in person. Have a good weekend. Enjoy your non-wavering.